You mentioned speaking on apathy there and engaging people who are apathetic. And I mean, that's really interesting to me, actually, because for a while there, back when, I don't know, when was it, Richard Dawkins was sort of the big name, and we think of this really aggressive anti-Christian polemic. And in some ways, I think, thinking apologetics-wise, that actually feels easier and more comfortable in a sense, isn't it? It gives you something to latch onto. Here's a critique, here's a criticism, and I'm going to show how it's erroneous, it's misguided, whatever. But the apathetic person, that's a different sort of problem altogether. How did you get onto that topic, and what did that kind of look like?
I think I was asked to speak on it mainly because, as you mentioned, with Richard Dawkins and others who've been very big voices in particular places in the UK. But for the most part, that's not really where, your everyday person is really at. They haven't read Dawkins. You were talking about this the other day, weren't we?
Yeah.
And they don't really, they haven't read his books. They don't know what he's about.
And for anyone watching thinking, Richard Dawkins, that's ringing a bell. Hang on. Just give us a 30 seconds reminder on Richard Dawkins.
So he was one of the, he was dubbed one of the henchmen of the apocalypse, along with a couple of few other names. I know it's quite, what a title. Along with Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris and others, who are these key kind of intellectuals in the universities who really just very much hate God and want to intellectually show, allegedly, why it is that everyone else should agree with them.
So this is really kind of militant atheism.
Exactly.
They are utterly certain.
Exactly.
That God is a pile of nonsense.
Yes, and you too are stupid if you believe that the good God can possibly exist.
So I want to persuade people out of what he thinks is the utter evident stupidity.
Yes.
Of believing God. This is all the heyday, 10, 15 years ago, wasn't it? Okay. However,
yeah, well, I think they just left a bit of a vacuum. So as you say, it was about 10 to 15 years ago. And at the time, in particular circuits, these were the big questions that people were addressing, was trying to think, how do we respond to people like this? Yeah. And then people responded to people like that very persuasively and very well. You think about John Lennox, who is a wonderful man of mind who teaches, I forget now, is it physics and mathematics? And he did a lot of work responding to them. But then after that, there was just this kind of emptiness, this kind of vacuum of meaning where people started to think, well, I'm now starting to see that if what Dawkins and others are saying is true, then that means there are certain things that I have to get rid of. So I think one of the kind of hinge points was when Peter Singer, who does a lot of work in ethics and thinking about morality, right and wrong, and he was saying that it's morally permissible to abort a baby post-birth. Mm-hmm. And so lots of people after that thought, whoa, that's not right. Yep. So the logical outworkings of my atheism it's not at all emotionally or intellectually satisfactory to me. Mm-hmm. But so I still want to uphold in some way that there is this kind of, there's meaning, there's almost like the sanctity of life, that life is precious. But how do I do that without God? And so there was this big kind of, big vacuum and opportunity that created to then start the conversation about God after that. So then there's actually much more kind of spiritual intrigue, thinking about, questions of faith now than there ever have been because of the militant atheists. They've kind of shown that their own position doesn't stand up to scrutiny. But then what do we do with these desires, with these longings that we have, and the lurch that we have towards meaning and truth and purpose? So that's just a very long way to say that there's this kind of desire to want more. But then after that, probably, I think in the past maybe 3 to 4 years, there has been cultivated a kind of an apathy towards God and to those questions. So you'll find now that if you were to ask somebody, do you think that a good God, can exist? They'll probably say, I don't really know. I don't really care. It's what you believe is what you believe. What do you think? That's fine. And so that's the point that now we're starting to pick up the conversation and think, okay, how do we talk to people where they're at right now, which is more of what somebody else has called, it's a trained benign indifference. It's not something that's happened overnight.
Trained benign indifference.
Yeah.
Talk us through each of those words.
Yeah. So this isn't something that people just have woken up one day and said, you know what, I now want to be apathetic. I've now decided that I don't want to care about God and his existence. Mm-hmm. It's something that has been well, I guess it's something that they've been trained to do. I'm trying to think of another word other than trained. It's been cultivated, it's been developed intentionally.
So what kinds of things cultivate us in this?
There's a guy called Jonathan Roach, who is an economist and an activist, and he writes for the Atlantic Monthly. And back in 2003, he wrote an article on apatheism. And in that article, he addresses this in its entirety, saying that what has led to this rise of apathy is religious extremism. So as you look at 9/11 and all of the other like awful attacks that have taken place in Europe and in the UK and elsewhere, this kind of religious extremism has led people to think, well, if that's where religion takes you, then I don't really want anything to do with that. So you can do that over there. And so it's led to this kind of trained, well, I'm just going to train myself to not think about it, because if I think about it, then obviously that leads to this kind of hideous manifestation of religion, which I don't want anything to do with. So again, it's all part and parcel of, this is my truth, tell me yours, you can take it or, leave it. There are lots of different ideas, that's fine. And so they've just trained themselves not to care and almost shut off. Because, I was in Birmingham for quite a while before I came to London. And I remember walking, I was outside New Street Station, and we go down by the Bull Ring. There are all these shops, and you can't really walk maybe a few hundred yards without having either a Christian standing in the street kind of saying, repent, the time is nigh, repent. And then you walk a few kind of yards down, and then you can hear the Quran being audibly. You can hear it audibly. It's being played, and so there are Muslim friends over there who are wanting to tell you about Islam. And then you go a little bit further, and then there's this like a spiritualist group, and you go a bit further, and then you see the Jehovah's Witnesses, and so there's just this competing marketplace of different religious ideas. And so people have kind of trained themselves just to not hear it. It's better to just it's fine. It's just the cacophony of these different noises leads people to like retreat. And so you put up this wall of apatheism, apatheism, something else, and say, well, I'm trying to protect myself from it. But also I just don't care because it's so loud that I'm just trying to make myself immune to it. So it's benign in that way. It's not malevolent. It's not nasty.